for the most part, I think that's what's really helped is that connection you make to them. They know you really care. They know that you're gonna find a spot for them, and then you just spend a lot of that time trying to pump them up and build them up.
Got a different kind of episode today and invited two of my friends who work with junior high and high school athletes to join us and talk about their world. So got Troy Black and Dylan Heath. Guys, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So I know you all both at different levels where Troy was he's so old, he was my junior high PE teacher at one point. And Dylan just connected with you over the years. But if you can both just share briefly, give us kind of the 1 minute snippet of your background in coaching and education.
Well, I've done this is my 36th year of, I've taught all levels, elementary through high school. Coaching wise, I've coached high school kids, 10 years as a head coach at the high school level, and then the rest as assistant coach. I've coached track, football, wrestling, and then mainly been in the weight room the last, 12 to 15 years in the weight room as a high school instructor. Did teach middle school PE for a while. Had an uncle that was a high school coach who was hugely influential for me. That's why I got into it realistically, was my uncle and my high school coach. So that's kind of what I've done. It's been my ambition to do this all along, and I've been lucky enough to do it 36 years.
Yeah. To be honest, I kind of stumbled into this. I've been here at Collegiate for 8 years now. This is year 8. 6 of those years, I was on the boys' side for youth basketball, middle school basketball. And then the last 2 years, I've transitioned over to the varsity girls' side and been teaching in the weight room for just as long as that. I interned at Wichita State on their women's side with their volleyball teams and their softball teams. And so I've kind of got to see a wide range of athletes from grade school all the way up to college. Been real fun and fortunate enough to do that. So
yeah. So strength and conditioning, your primary background?
Yeah, for me, I think that's what I really wanted to get into. I was interning down at Wichita State with those teams, and part of my program is I needed to have an internship hours. So that's how I got connected here with Troy. And then he just kept bringing me around and had me substitute teach. And that led into a full-time job. And here I am 8 years later.
8 years later. Cool. Well, both of you are doing it differently, but I've watched you both build programs. So you're at Wichita Collegiate School, which is preschool through high school. But you've built programs, Troy on the football side, that's just been good over time. And I'm the father of 2 young daughters who are getting involved in some sports, and I've watched Dylan get involved in building the younger ages. Talk about just how your strategy in building programs, even training coaches, and what are the easy things, what are the challenges? I'll leave that pretty wide open.
Well, for us, I've been very blessed. I got to be a part of Mike Gear's staff who built this program, and really the whole athletic program here. Mike had a huge hand in at Collegiate. Came in underneath him, and we had a great staff. We had a guy named John Dawkins who was an X and O guru, who I learned a lot about how to become a football coach and what to do. Mike is probably the most positive human being on the planet, and got to learn a lot from him as far as how to motivate kids, deal with people, become a people person. So that was my blessing to start off my career. Like I said earlier, I had a great high school coach who really did a lot for me. I'm from a divorced family, lived with my mom, didn't really have a father figure in my life. And my coach kind of took that role for me. So starting early, those guys were huge influences for me. Then I got lucky enough to go back home and coach with my high school coach for a couple years and be on that side, not the athlete side, but the coach side, and see how he did things and took things from him. Was blessed to come back and be with Mike, Bill Messamore, who took over for Mike here. I've just been lucky to be around a lot of people and take from everybody. I mean, you take from people, but you still put your own spin on it. And so for me, it was just the fact that I got to be around some great people, see how they run their programs and do things. And then you just put your twist. And so, for here, it's been, you're trying to maintain the excellence that Mike built and Bill built. And then at the same time, put your own spin on it. And of course, been here over 36 years off and on. Things have changed, but that's kind of how I do things. Even now, I spend time with my friends that are successful coaches. One of my best friends is the head coach at Hutch. Different environment, but I learn from him every time I'm around him. And I think if you're a good coach, a good leader, you're always trying to find new and better ways to do things. Like guys that they're out there. This is a AD that they think they've marketed this is how we do it. I just think there's always a better way, or looking just to tweak what we do and see how other people do it. And so I've just been really, really lucky. I mean, I really am.
One change I've seen over the last, I think it's 5 or 10 years, is just how much engagement and parent leadership there is at the lower levels to get kids in your system playing. Curious your take on how much you've been involved in that and how helpful that is, or what are the drawbacks? I drive by and I see what looks like kindergartners playing football on Saturday mornings.
For football, Coach Gear and I, a few years ago, it happened to be when my son was getting ready to play youth football. We got involved in it because we didn't want a bunch of non-coaches that just watch football on Saturday coach our kids. We wanted to do it the right way. And so we kind of started our youth football program. And now I have one of my assistant coaches whose sons are in the program. He runs it. And, our hand in that is huge. Like, we teach our coaches, we coach our coaches. We actually try to find guys that have coaching ability to do it. Now, we still got to use parents, and don't get me wrong, they're hugely vital for a youth program. But, youth sports, I haven't had a kid go through youth sports. It's hard to find that balance of daddy ball and really instructing kids how to play. And so here we've been really blessed. And I know Dylan can talk about too, because he's now doing it with the girls basketball program. But we're trying to get people that can coach, know how to teach, because coaching is teaching.
Yep.
Then you fill in with people that understand their role, that they're not there to make their kid be the star quarterback or whatever, just to help develop them. And the main thing, I got to model it a little bit after Brandon Clark, but we want them to have fun. We want them to enjoy our game. In this case, for me, it's football. And when they get to us, we'll weed them out eventually. But early, we want them to have fun. Sure, we want them to win, and they want to win. But we're very blessed. Jason Ramsey, leads my youth program, does an awesome job of getting really good people to coach, really good parents to help out. And our kids have fun. And we've had over 100 kids we do flag football all the way up through 5th and 6th grade tackle football. And our kids, our numbers continue to rise every year. Jason does a great job of him and his coaches of making it fun. And I think that's huge in today's world. The kids today, if they're not having fun, they don't feel engaged, they're not going to keep doing it, especially something hard like football. It's hot, you got to wear equipment, all that. And even Dylan's finding that out in basketball.
Yeah. Dylan, share your side of it, building the women's side.
Yeah, I'll just kind of echo on what he said. I think that the unique thing about what I walked into was I basically have walked into the same problems that Troy and Mitch and Mike had just 30 years later. And so the cool thing is I've kind of got to cut and paste what those three guys did to build their programs up, obviously put my own spin on it. But the first thing we're still trying to fight is making girls basketball the fun thing to do, or the cool thing to do at the school. And I think we're getting close to doing that. Our numbers across the board, I got 36 third graders through 5th graders that are playing. Our middle school teams just finished up Saturday. I think we had around 20 there, that's a really good number for us. But just getting the girls involved and making it the fun thing. I think also another thing that's really helped me out is I was the PE teacher, and still am, before I was their coach. So those girls got to see me kind of in a more relaxed, kind of a different light, that, okay, he is a real person. He's got a sense of humor, fun to be around. But then when they see me as a coach, they do get that more serious side. So I think that's really helped me too, is they see both sides to me, and then just making it fun has been a big challenge.
Yeah. Well, again, for everybody listening, my kids go to the school that they're at. So my oldest daughter cheerleads, which I question the age we're starting that at too. But so we're at a game she's cheerleading at, and we sit down next to, it's a 6th grade girls basketball game. And we sit down next to parents who I know don't have kids that age. And I was like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, we just really want to support the women's basketball program. So you had parents coming out to the game that didn't have kids playing just because they believe in kind of the vision of what you're doing. I thought that was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, that is. And the parent support that I've got from all the levels has just been amazing.
Yeah. So I made fun of them a little bit, but right. So talk kind of on a higher level. How would you in each of your areas describe the current sport culture? Just the environment kids are. I heard you talking about fun. I know at my level, we see a lot of the bad of over parent involvement can trickle over to what we're doing. So yeah, talk kind of what you see and how you describe the current culture.
For me, especially in the last couple of years, the entitlement factor, the fact that we've kind of lost the old school work ethic. Now, don't get me wrong. There are places that are there. We have a lot of it here, but we got a lot of it where, hey, I've been out, I've gone to weights, I've gone to your camp. I need to play. I should be playing. I deserve to play. So that entitlement of I've done everything you want. Why am I not? Why is my kid not playing? Why am I not playing? Has really trickled over before. I think it's harder. Not so much for football because you have so many different positions and everybody kind of figures out. But I don't know. Like basketball, I don't know how I couldn't coach basketball. The amount of not wanting to play your role, the fact that everybody can touch the ball, that's probably been the biggest thing. And then just the lack of ability to concentrate and focus, follow direction, follow instruction. Maybe people get tired of hearing the grind, but the patience to understand that it is a grind, and sometimes you got to wait to get your turn. I had a kid this year. As long as I coach, I will talk about him from now on. For the first 3 years, if he wouldn't have came out for football, I probably wouldn't have lost any sleep over it. He wasn't, he was pretty strong, but we just didn't have a place for him. And I knew he got frustrated as he got older, but being in an environment kind of where entitlement is kind of big, he just kept grinding and kept going, and we finally found a place for him. And then his senior year, he plays, he starts, he makes first team all league as a defensive player. He makes all state honorable mention in almost every publication. And here's a kid that if he kind of follows today's model would have quit 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I think I feel like those kids are rare. And we had our banquet the other day, and I really try to highlight him because I got some young kids that are in the same boat. They're impatient. They don't want to wait. They feel like they're entitled to their spot right now. And that's what when you played, when I played, you knew your time would come and you just put your time in and you just kept working and you kept grinding, and it was okay to be a JV player. It was okay to be developmental. And now it's like, no, I can't. I mean, Dylan's dealt with that just in basketball, well, they're playing and I'm not, so I'm quitting. I'm done. And we've lost that ability to grind, to put in your time, to work. The instant satisfaction of today's world is really made it hard. You spend a lot of time with kids trying to get them to understand, hey, it's a process. And yeah, that Jimmy over here, he got there first, but it doesn't mean you're not going to. And so that's been a struggle for me, being an old school guy. I haven't done this for a long time. You got to learn how to develop those kids and keep them interested and keep them engaged and make sure they're going to eventually reach, get what they want out of it.
What do you think, Dylan?
Yeah, speaking now that I've been on the girls' side going into my third year, I think girls' high school sports is at such a fragile point now, especially like basketball. Like he said, my first year, I had a couple of freshmen who they were developmental players. They got to play all the minutes on JV, but then they had a few friends that played all the varsity minutes. And then the end of the season, they decided not to come back. So just the fact that people aren't willing to wait, put their time in to work and develop their skill and their craft has really hurt. But another thing that's hurting basketball especially is volleyball. A lot of the girls that I try to go get to play basketball in our hallways that could really help us out, they're, I'm playing volleyball every weekend for 36 of 52 weeks, and, stuff like that. Or, club soccer is starting to get pretty popular on the girls' side too. And, they see that, I don't want to practice every day when I can go, practice 2-3 times a week with soccer, volleyball, not as much running. Soccer is a little bit different, but if high school girls sports is a thing in the next 5 to 10 years, I'd be very surprised just the way that the club scene is taking over, especially volleyball and soccer. The way that club scene is set up is no matter how good your child is, there's always going to be a spot for them. Mm-hmm. Whereas basketball, like he said, I can only put 5 girls on the court at one time. I can only have 12 on a roster. Whereas football, you can have a roster of 40 and there's 44 different positions, or baseball, softball, you got 9 different positions that the girls can play. There's just more opportunities in those other sports.
Yeah. And the club scene, if there's more kids, they just create another team and it just keeps growing.
I actually had a parent bring this up this year because we got a lot of kids that play multiple sports once you got to a small school. But speaking of club basketball, it can be baseball too, but in this case, having me club basketball, I got some guys that just don't know how to practice. Mm-hmm. They think they practice hard, but they don't. And the parent brought up a point. In the club scene, they don't practice. I mean, they might have one a week but basically you show up and you play all weekend, and especially at the high school level. And so, when they do practice, it's not a real practice. So it really shone some light in it. And it really helped me a little bit because I was always on those guys hard, hey, you're not going to. And so I had to take a little bit different approach, almost, almost trick them to practice hard because they just don't know how. And that's something new. Like before, I mean, you just, that's part of it, but not in the club scene. You play more than you practice. And, I know some sports are worse, than at it than that. But if a kid is exposed to that in another sport, it carries over. And, that's something that I just feel like in the last few years, and like, I didn't even realize it till that parent brought it up, and it was a parent that brought it up. And I'm like, wow, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I got 2 follow-ups. First one on that topic, our strength coach at Friends has this line of whether people like you or not, or the team likes you or not, this season, they're what you got. This is what we got. This is the generation we got. So on the topic of, sticking with it, working hard, whatever we pick, I feel like there's an interesting line of where do coaches, administrators choose to adapt, and where do we say this is how it is? So take that practice argument. Where do you adapt, and where do you say, hey, this is how it is?
Well, I think that line's always moving. And, there are communities that, Andale, for example, comes to mind. This is what we do. This is how we're going to do it. And culturally within their community, that's acceptable. But even there, it's you talk to them and it's kind of moving too. So I think what you got to do is you always got to have a pulse of what your kids need or will do. And that's just anything now with coaching. So I don't know if there's really a line like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're always going to tweak and mess with it. Just kind of like anything, you always got to keep working on it. But it's hard to come up, hey, this is what we're going to do. You don't like it. It's hard to do that. I think what you do, which I know this is something we get to later, but, reading a 3-dimensional coaching book that you guys have your French coaches read, and you had me read that, really was huge for me. I try to give kids more input than before ever. I try to give them an opportunity to get feedback from them, talk to them. We do things, for example, just in the weight room. Everybody used to do the same thing. Everybody lifted. We did the same workout. Didn't matter what sport you played. Now, if you come in, we have in season, off season. We have, you're in the swimming team, so we got a swimming workout. So, but we've got that from input from our athletes, sometimes from our parents that are actually dialed in and, not trying to tell you what to do, but giving. So I think you always got to be evolving and look at your audience, look at your team, and develop that line for that team. Last couple of years for us, we've had great leadership. And so we've done some things differently than I did just 3 years ago because of the group of kids that I had. And so I think guys that get stuck in the way and they're just, this is how we're going to do it, whether you like it or not. And if you're not in the right environment for that, those were guys that are struggle. I think those that can read your environment and do things and take input, yet still find ways to get the ultimate goal, which, in our case is to work hard, bust your tail, do your things. Like I said, like you've already mentioned. So what Dylan's doing with the basketball program is deep down, we want everybody working hard and being committed, but he's created some other ways to not trick them, but he's working on it, but it's a different way that doesn't seem old school or whatever, however, to where you could turn people off or push them away.
I have a coaching friend that says that coaching is a democracy with his players and things that he doesn't think matters. So gives them a lot of choice in the stuff that's not as important. Here's the other follow-up question. So my bias, the longer I'm in sports, the more in a lot of ways it doesn't matter, just the core of the game. It's I think learning to be on a team, learning to work through all that stuff matters. But the most valuable experience I see are the kids that don't get the role they want and deal with it and stick it out. Those are the kids I want to hire. And that's very challenging to do. And curious what strategies you've used to get kids to learn to wait their turn, and what I can assume I understand the challenges you face. But Dylan, start with you. Give me your responses to that of kids learning to deal with the role they don't want and sticking with it.
To be honest, I haven't had to deal with that yet just because our team is so small. So like last year I had 9 girls on a team And there were some girls that kind of had to get thrusted into playing minutes when they weren't quite ready. And I think on one hand, yes, they're excited they get to play, but like you said, they're not quite ready for that role yet. And that's where I just try to use my life experiences on, what sports have taught me and what really is the ultimate goal of sport. For me, the ultimate goal of sport is if I can take these kids, develop and mold them into productive citizen of the world when they graduate in 4 years and go graduate college, and then that they can see the value of what sports have done for them, then I think that's a success. But, like I have a couple freshmen right now who they probably would be JV players everywhere else, but they've kind of had to accept a bigger role, at the start of the season. Actually, this is a good example. Week 1 of the season, their role was, hey, I just need you to learn the offense, learn what we're doing, our culture of what we want, what it looks like to work hard. And then I had a few girls who unfortunately decided not to come out. Now all of a sudden their role has changed. And instead of being starstruck and, wide-eyed freshmen, they've came in and they've really stepped it up. And I think one thing that I stole from Coach Fiegel is having some sort of quote every day and then tying it into not only the situation we're going through now, but also future situations that they're going to face in real life. And how, yes, basketball is such a small, minute thing, but how that one thing that you are struggling with now could turn into something that might help you down the road in your adult life.
For me, it's for my guys, and for example, the kid this year, you spend a lot of time with them. I'm lucky to be at a small school where I can do that. If I was at a big school where I have 150 players, probably can't do this. But here I have a small group. I spend a lot of time with them, being the guy in the weight room with them on top of everything else. So there are a lot of times where I take those kids that are struggling with their role and we have one-on-one talks. Sometimes it may be, the parent calls and said, hey, Billy's not going to go out next year because he feels like he should be starting. He's really disappointed. I don't want you to tell him, well, I figured I've done this long enough. I have a meeting and say, hey, I heard through the grapevine that you're unhappy. Let's talk about, what's your expectation? So we have a conversation and I get to kind of pick their brain. I feel like I have a good relationship with most of my kids. And so they're pretty honest with me. And then we can be honest with them. And I think that helps. I mean, the kid that I was talking about this year, I think with Drake, it was awesome. I think, we spent a lot of time. And when we talk, it's not like, okay, you're not good at this. It's like, okay, we tried this, it didn't work, but I think you could do this. Or, hey, man, you're one of the strongest guys in the weight room. We're going to find a spot. Things are going to happen. Just be patient. You have to do that a lot because kids aren't patient. But I think that individual attention and getting to know them, they're willing to, not always. I mean, I still have kids that won't do it, and no matter what you do. But for the most part, I think that's what's really helped is that connection you make to them. They know you really care. They know that you're gonna find a spot for them, and then you just spend a lot of that time trying to pump them up and build them up. And it's not to just have numbers. I mean, I could give you a bazillion examples just in the last few years where, I mean, that's what we do. This is our profession. Just like you've been a coach, now you're athletic director. This is what we do. We know our kids. I mean, if you're a good coach, you know your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's convincing mom and dad and the kid, hey, it's going to happen. Just got to be patient. Sometimes you got to go through some painful situations to get there. But that's, to me, huge. Just coming in, sit down on the couch, let's talk, and let them talk. And then you give them, and you're not always going to agree, but I think that really helps out.
Yeah. But I think, there's a spin on how do you create value for those lower end kids, and they can have absolute value in their athletic experience without being a starter. Now that takes a sell, but I think that's where 3D coaching or the impactful coaching project work we're doing of creating a culture, whether you're playing or not, that's fun, fair, but people feel connected. I think that's hard to do without time and some real intent behind what you're doing.
100%.
Yeah. Kind of similar refrain of what we're talking about. I'm curious the difference of junior high kids to high school kids, but what do they need from their coach? Like outside of obviously knowing the game and teaching the game, what do they need?
Well, I think all kids, even if it's a kid that doesn't play your sport, they need to know you care about them more so than ever before, I think. And I misremember growing up, you respected your coaches because of who they were, of their position, their role. Today's world isn't like that. I used to get frustrated and I had kids say, you got to earn. we got to earn their respect, and and there's a lot of ways to do that. There's a fine line of trying to be their friend, but I think if kids know you care about them as individuals, not just as a football player or a basketball player, golf or whatever, that you care about them, they will do almost anything for you. And I don't care whether that's here at Collegiate or at Fredonia High School or Wellington, where Dylan's from. I think that's the biggest thing, is that if kids know you care and you're invested, and it's not, you don't have to go to every basketball game, but you know what, when Jimmy shows up and he plays football for you, and he also plays basketball, and you find out, hey man, great job, you had 12 points last night. They'll start talking to you. Coach, I played terrible. I shot terrible. Oh, but man, you had 12. You start having, but the kid, all he leaves the conversation is like, dang, coach wasn't even there and he knew how many points I had. And that's huge. I think in today's world where kids they want your attention. They want to be coached. They want to be guided, but they want to be looked at more than just as a football player or whatever. I think that's the biggest thing. And even middle school, but you got to have the right mentality. As I get older, I mean, Dylan's got the perfect mentality. I did back when you were young, but it's a different energy level now. And I mean, Dylan can speak on the middle school because he's with them every day.
Yeah, I think for the middle school, really just someone that they can trust, someone that is going to be, I don't want to say that rock, but just that constant, always going to be there, always going to be able to trust me with anything. I've had a ton of kids that would prefer to talk to me rather than go to the counselor on something. But just getting to know the kids and knowing all their personalities, I think that's where actually being a teacher and being able to read people is such a valuable skill to have as a coach. Just knowing, I have a ton of kids that I just know, okay, they've had a bad day just by the way they walked in, or just by the way they said hi to me, or what they're going through. They know that they can trust me. One thing I did early is I would sit with the kids at lunch and just get to know, just going back and forth with their little banner, just kind of nitpicking at each other in a fun and healthy way, but just so they can see you in a different light. I don't always want them to see me as Coach Heath, just serious all the time. I want them to know, there's a fun side to me as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that's huge, especially with today's kids, when, just think about 4 years ago, these kids had almost no outside adult interaction.
Yeah.
We have kids who are still learning how to talk to adults, how to behave around adults and other kids too.
So I'm going to ask a question, kind of last one before we wrap up, that I didn't send you beforehand, so forgive me. But we've been doing research on motivation and what motivates kids to compete and participate at Fringe University. So last year we asked all our student athletes, I think we got 500-ish responses. And I'm going to read you the answers, and then I'm curious your world, if it resonates or you think the motivation will be different. So these are NAI college athletes. Of all the kids we asked, 60% of them said the primary motivation for participating in their sport was relationships. Okay. And the breakdown of that was 50% said relationships with teammates, 25% was family, 15% was coaches, and then kind of random stuff from there. But so coaches were number 3 within the subcategory relationships. But so 60% reported relationships, 20% reported love of the sport, and 11% reported winning motivate them. So curious your reactions to that in your world. If you think like a majority of our kids are saying they're motivated by relationships, would that be similar in your world? How would you
yeah, for middle school, I think that's 100% true. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many girls played basketball just because their friends said it was fun. And so they wanted to be a part of that. They wanted to be with their friends. High school, that kind of, I feel like on the girls' side, that kind of trickles away a little bit. But for middle school, 100%, a lot of kids are only playing because their friends are playing. And, like we just started a soccer team. What was that, 3 or 4 years ago? The first year, I don't know if they had a ton, but then those girls just said how much fun it was. And then all their friends decided to come out. I think last year they had a group of like 25 girls for the middle school soccer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that 100% for the middle school side.
For the upper school and high school kids, I would say it's still pretty close to the numbers you have at the college level. For example, this year we were going to give up. We do team dinners on Thursday night. I didn't like it because they didn't set as team; they set as classes. And I figured that, in the old days for Team Denver, they just would go. The seniors would go to Red Robin and somebody else would go someplace else. And they threw a fit. And they actually came up with other ideas so we could keep it, to make it more, because it was about relationships. And so we'd put them together. Linemen would be at a table, or you go by groups. I just randomly mixed them up. And then it got to, at first like, oh man, I want to sit with my classmates. Then it got to be, hey, what's our group? Who's in our group? And it's because it's all about relationships. I mean, it realistically, and not like, and I think the numbers really are accurate at our level. It's about, a lot of guys will play, like Dylan said, in middle school, same in high school. I'm going to play because of, and then when a guy or girl doesn't play, sometimes those friends, that relationship is kind of hurt because they didn't play. Whether they were going to make the team better or not, I think kids do that because they wanted to spend time with that's their people. That's their group. And I think even at the highest level, obviously football is my thing, but if you look at what you guys are doing at Friends, the Chiefs, for example, the teams that are most successful, they have locker rooms that are built on relationships. People want to be with the people in that locker room because that's who you're with all the time. And, Terry's doing a phenomenal job at Friends with that. I think your most successful teams at the highest of levels do that. And I mean, yes, you got to have talent.
Are you saying something positive about the Chiefs right now? I didn't know that was your thing.
I am. Well, that's one thing I'm going to say positive, because just think about it. Think about the fact that you got a team that one side of the ball, is not really carrying their end of the deal. Yet you never hear any complaints. It's all about us, or even and the quarterback, when he doesn't play well, it's not that, hey, they dropped 8 balls or we ran 10 wrong routes. It was my fault. So there's such a group there that has become that they're able to win 13 games and play like, not their best. They know that. And I think that's the culture that's been developed. And I think as coaches, we got to build on that relationship part. You got to make kids want to be a part of it. They're not playing for you. They're playing for their friends. And I think you have to emphasize that. And it needs to be a place where they all want to be at. Mm-hmm. And that becomes the challenge, because the old days it was, hey, you coach, you played at Fredonia, we're always in the playoffs, or you play at X school here and we're always in the playoffs. So just expected to play. It's just different now. And it's got to be a place where they want to be at, because they don't have to be. And probably, Dylan would probably agree, at our place, especially, our kids are going to go to school no matter what. They don't need sports to go to school. Where we grew up, some of us needed sports to go to school, but here they don't. So it is a challenge for us, because our kids can very easily say, I don't need football. I don't need girls basketball. I don't need any of that. I'm going to go to KU or TCU or wherever. So you got to make it to where it's a place where people want to be and spend their time. And, I mean, we could talk forever on that. You do that in the weight room too. The weight room. Who wants to lift weights? You got 110 athletes. You got 590 athletes. Probably in your case, 50, our case, 10 are hardcore lifters. They don't matter. We could sit in here and read a book and they'll be out there doing their thing. Everybody else needs to be motivated. And it's not, yelling, screaming, hollering. It's make it a place they want to come and be. And whatever that is, there's no magic. But, I feel like Dylan does a great job. Well, I know he does a great job. Middle school, he got them to start a middle school program. And now there's like 40 kids. Like kids take it all the time. It's become huge. And it's not because they get to be in the high school weight room. It's because Dylan makes it enjoyable. Sure, he gets on them. He pushes them. He demands. But him and Mrs. Lipple do a great job of making it a fun place. And then they learn how, hey, this is important. And today, that's just, I think, gigantic for success.
So I tell people, I consider our strength staff as important as anybody in the athletic department, because they touch every kid we have, and building a positive environment in there where kids feel like they belong, just by, I think it's practical of they're seeing every kid. They got the best handle sometimes on all of it. How do we invest and do that really well? I think matters. And then here's the last spin I'll give you. I'll say my statements and move on. But so we're just a third of a way through our research this year, and we asked a different way on motivation and kind of having them rank order what's important to them. And through our fall sports, family has been the most important relationship. Our kids say that motivates them to compete, which part of me's like, cool, you got a close family. Part of me scared of that, of you take that number of kids saying family's like their primary motivator. You add in the club sport dynamic that you're talking about, where there's been so much family commitment for so long, I wonder if they love the sport or they're doing it just because that's what their family's identity's been for so long. There's an interesting rub that almost puts more of a, if that's true, which I don't know if it is, puts more of a burden on coaches of how do we make this fun, get beyond the sport of being a part of a team and working together and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're looking at next. Yeah, I was just really surprised to see family so high.
Well, I think your club sports, your baseball, softball, soccer, basketball, volleyball, where they do play it so much outside of the school world, where it is the family. You're from little on up. Obviously, being a club sport dad, with Brett playing baseball, and as a parent, I worry about that sometimes too. With my son who's at your university, who loves it, who's very good, but sometimes I want, because as a coach, I'm still, hey, you got to work out over break. Hey, you got to do this. Hey, you got to get blah, blah, blah. I think that's important, which I think goes back to, because family for a lot of these kids was a prime reason for playing, that I think you have to try to make your teams feel like a family to where they feel. Now you're right, as a coach, then it's like, oh gosh, how involved is mom and dad? But I think if that's part of too, being where we are, Dylan and I, and Dylan's learned this, you have to have a relationship with our parents.
Yep.
It's not the old public school. And I've been at public school, and I'm not bashing them at all, but the old mentality of public school, hey, listen, until the board fires me, I'm going to do what I want. We don't operate like that here. And now I'm not saying parents come in and tell me what to do, but I try to develop a relationship with them. I want them on my side. And if it is, if you've got kids that are playing because of family, and then they feel their family feels connected because they're just a connection to the program, man, that makes things so much. I don't know. I mean, even this year, I had a 6:45 in the parking lot before school meeting with the dad, and it wasn't a confrontational thing. That dad and I have somewhat of a relationship, a respect factor, and I was glad to have it, because I knew where the kid was at, and allowed me to deal with it instead of beating on the door and mad as a hornet. They feel comfortable to come to me, and that's hard sometimes, because when they turn on you, we kind of become friends, but there's a fine line. And I think the longer you're in this, you develop that. Dylan's, with what he's doing with his basketball program, I'm sure he's going to say the same thing, that's helped him immensely try to develop the program he's got going.
Yeah, especially when I first came in, I heard nothing of horror stories about a select few parents on our group. And I've just from day one, I tried to be as open and as approachable to those people as I could. I've had zero problems with them. And in fact, those parents are the ones who have supported me the most through the thick and the thin. And just having their support just means that much more. And yeah, I'll kind of comment on the relationships. I had a kid in here who I've got to know him a little bit, but I've got to know his dad as well. And the kid wasn't performing up to the standard that we'd had set. And just having that relationship with the parent makes that conversation much more easy. And the parent didn't take it as I'm picking on their kid. The parent took it as, okay, I'm going to fix this. Whereas if all I ever had was a negative experience with that parent, they probably would have went the other way around. And there's been a lot of times, especially in the middle school, to where I have felt comfortable enough calling up parents and say, hey, little Johnny's not doing what he's supposed to do. Can you talk to him? And there's no problem, coach. Next day it's fixed, and then I've also heard stories to where it's been the other way. Teachers will call parents, and the parent doesn't have any connection with that teacher, and they just ignore them or don't do anything about it. So having that connection with the parent is almost more important than having the connection with the kid in some sense.
Yeah. And we're kind of being a promotional episode for the 3D coaching piece, but they have curriculum around that too, of how to work with parents. And some of it's common sense of, as a parent, you hear from your kid, if you have no relationship with the coach, you're going to go by what your kid says, and right or wrong. So anyways,
I think no, I was just saying, man, if I know you do it at Friends, but I think if anybody coaches, whether it's youth or whatever, they should read that book. I mean, one, if you don't like to read, it's a simple read, but it was changing for me. I mean, it really was. And like I said, I've been around some great people. And when you read the book and you start thinking about the people that influenced you, they were all like that before somebody wrote a book and put it all down in writing. Yep. But even if you think you're that guy, I mean, I would like to think I was that guy before I read the book. It really opened my eyes and really it helped me through a rough year. 3 years ago, I had a rough year coaching. It's really helped me the last 2 years, and it continues to help me, and I don't really go back to it. There were some things that were impactful reading it that guide me through now, and I probably ought to reread it because it's a great read. And, what you guys are doing, I think is awesome. I think today's young coaches, they just want to coach. It's all about X and O's. It's all about winning. And they're missing the other value of it, especially at your level and our level. No, we're not putting people in, a D1 athlete here and there for us. For you guys, you're not putting anybody in the NFL or an NBA or Major League Baseball. You're developing great young people and they're just getting opportunity to continue to do something they love. Mm-hmm. So hats off to you and sharing that book and that idea and having your people follow that and do that.
And we just actually, shameless plug, came out with a book that's similar tone to 3D. I'll drop one by for you guys.
Hey, good.
Let you critique it. Tell me where we got it wrong. All right. We always wrap up with a rapid fire round, but I've never had two people. The first question is about a book. So I'll start with Dylan here. You have no longer than 15 seconds to answer. What is the book you've given most as a gift and why?
I haven't given it as a gift, but I think the other part of that was I've read the most, but There's Only One Way to Win by Dick DaVincio.
Never heard of that one. I'll check it out. All right, Troy, how has a failure set you up for a later success?
Mainly just by stepping back, seeing what happened, and then attacking what caused that problem. And then allows you to, especially got to be open-minded, but then allows you to hopefully fix it.
Dylan, what's your favorite podcast?
Well, it'd be the West Side Barbell podcast with Link from Simmons.
Joe Belden has gotten to you. Troy, how do you define success in your work?
For me, it's relationships after they're done. A couple weeks ago, I got invited to a kid's wedding who was a former player of mine. To me, that's the ultimate.
And then for both of you, this is the last one. In the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
For me, I'd say reading. Just the things that it's opened up my mind to, whether I'm reading, strength and conditioning books, or lately just reading more coaching books and how to connect with people has been a game changer.
I'd say same. And also visiting people that have been successful, going and talking and getting to pick their brains as well.
Well, guys, this has been a blast. I appreciate you taking the time and really admire the work you're doing. And I get to watch it kind of up close and personal. And it's admirable. I appreciate all you do.
Well, thanks for having us. And same thing here. We got with Brett being there and knowing Joe and getting to see what you guys are doing and what you have done for friends. Being a former KCAC guy myself, it's very impressive what you guys got going on. So you're doing a great job of leading all of us coaches out here too.
Well, appreciate it. So we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
See you, Rob.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Beyond Coaching. Beyond Coaching is a podcast developed and produced by the Impactful Coaching Project with the support of Friends University. The Impactful Coaching Project seeks to develop coaches that coach the whole person and is the thought leader in coaching the 21st century athlete. The Impactful Coaching Project produces training, information, and research to help coaches improve. To see more information, go to impactfulcoachingproject.substack.com. Thank you.